Welcome to Adeptus On-Air, the show where we examine how individuals and companies make decisions that drive their business and personal success. Each week, we connect with notable professionals who pull back the curtain on the industries that Adeptus has been on the cutting edge of for the last 30 years, including music, sports, and entertainment, as well as new emerging markets.
Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to another episode of Adeptus On-Air. I am your host, Mike Hoffman. Today I am joined by actor, writer, and host of the Jeff Macolino podcast. You can probably guess his name at this point, Jeff Macolino. Jeff, how you doing?
I'm good. I'm very good. How are you?
I'm doing well, thanks. I got to tell you, I like how my marketing department kind of put together a little, bio of you. And I don't know if it's your words or their words, but I like the phrase, after a midlife crisis, he steered away from the corporate world, and now you're using the creative side of your brain.
Yeah. I deem it a midlife crisis because the way I drink, I figure 30s is midlife for me. I don't have high aspirations as far as the long life expectancy, so I call it a midlife crisis. What were you doing in the corporate world? I worked in insurance claims, mainly auto.
Okay.
Which was, I got into it right out of college.
Mm-hmm.
It pays well out of college. My first promotion I got, I had a lady come up to me and said, "Do you love doing this?" And I said, "No, does anyone?" And she's like, "Quit today." And I'm like, My thought is, what a jerk. Like, how rude this woman is.
Yeah.
And then I realized, 10 years later, I'm like, that woman tried to save my life.
Yeah. Well, I don't think anyone says, well, insurance claims, this is what I want to do when I grow up. So, it's definitely something that you do to pay the bills.
Yeah. And it's, the thing is, for two things is, one is the better you are at your job, the worse stuff you're dealing with. Like, if you're good at your job, you get to deal with serious injuries and dead people. That takes a toll on you. The other factor is, pretty much everyone you talk to is trying to screw you over when you're dealing with insurance claims, whether it's a lawyer or just somebody who thinks I got rear-ended, so now it's a payday, or someone who's at fault for an accident trying to come up with some reason that they're not at fault. It's just a really, like, everyone you talk to on the phone is just lying to you. It takes a toll.
I've thought this before. It was seriously with like people in like certain customer service jobs, and this is, to an extent, this was customer service. You're only hearing from people because there's a problem.
Yeah.
They're not calling just to check in and say, hey, how you doing? I've been in no accidents, just wanted to let you know. They're calling because they want something from you. Yeah.
And generally money. But it's never a good thing when you're talking on the phone. So it was a, the good thing I could say about it was interesting. It wasn't monotonous,
right?
But it just, for my personality, it took a toll on me.
So someone gives you a heads up to quit now, and 10 years later, you finally took the advice. So what was the driving force at that point that said, all right, you know what, I'm going to do this now?
Well, I know you don't typically go very morbid on the show, but I mean, almost committing suicide was what turned my boat around. Frankly, it almost happened. My mother called me on the phone, and luckily I answered, or I wouldn't be here.
Wow.
And even when I hung up the phone with her, my thought was, I'll just do it next week. Luckily, I moved past it in the next week. Depression is a finicky thing, but when I went to a therapist, and she, a lot of my stress in life was because my job, not only this nasty woman who was my boss, but the job itself took a toll on me. So I quit that job, went to doing a similar job. I instead of in management, I was back as a, individual performer. And I had the best boss, remote work, easy job, not really stressful, demanding. And every single day I still hated waking up and having to work. And I realized this is the best case scenario for doing this job. A good boss, very relaxed, no meeting.
And you're still miserable.
And I'm still miserable. It's like I just gotta call it. I gotta find something else because I can't keep banging my head against the wall and expect that one day I'm going to just say, oh, I'll do this another 30 years and then retire.
Well, listen, I think it comes to a point in a lot of people's lives when they just get kind of sick of their job. But I also believe for you to get to that point so young, I think you saw the writing on the wall, like, all right, it's one thing, I got 2 more years. You got potentially at that point 30 plus years. Like, you can't be miserable for that long. That's not fair to anyone. And especially you who've gone through some other, thought processes, which luckily you got out of, who it's good to, did you always have a creative side though? Because obviously we'll get to what you do now, but you really kind of changed gears. So.
Yeah, I did. I always had, it's interesting. I was super shy in grade school, but I would always go for the plays. The one thing I didn't do was musicals because I refused to sing. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, when I went to high school, the acting thing just disappeared because everything they did was a musical. So I just said, well, that's it's dead to me. In college, I took some acting courses for a while, but I was dating 2 girls at the time, and I had to pick between the girls and the acting classes, and I, made a decision.
You probably need to be a pretty good actor to juggle 2 girls at the same time, too, just saying.
I mean, it was non-exclusive, so, but yeah, no, it took, I had to make up some stories sometimes. I won't lie about that, but so I kind of got away from it. And then the one thing that kind of drove me when I was still working the insurance job was my brother-in-law, my brother and I were talking about creating this whole comic book universe, and we'd meet about it. We'd talk, we'd plan, we'd write stuff. And I realized that's the only part of my, this sounds morbid when I say it, but that's the only part of my life that I actually enjoy.
Sure.
I mean, aside from, hanging out with my kids and stuff like that. But the only work, we'll say, that I enjoy doing was that. And that kind of, again, came into the head of, well, maybe that's what I should try to do when I'm not working.
Right.
And then, of course, the next step is, well, what if I could make that my work? Mm-hmm. And that's kind of where I am now.
So, all right, so let's walk through that process. So now it's not just something that interests you. Now you need a job because you need income, whether, I don't know if you had kids at the time or whatever, but regardless, you need to support yourself at a minimum. So how did you turn those passions and that creative side of you into an income producing activity?
Well, the main thing is my philosophy was try everything. See what works, see what you enjoy, and then figure out a way to make money out of it. I was fortunate in my situation. I'm very fortunate that I had bought a house in 2011 because, what I needed the insurance job out of college because my girlfriend got pregnant my last semester of college. So, I did a lot of the older adult stuff in my early 20s.
Sure.
Which was obviously a blessing because that gives me now a house that I have a lot of equity in. So that gave me a lot of freedom to do things that honestly I know not everyone can do, where I could quit my job and say, I don't need an income for a year or 2.
Right.
And during that time, there's writing, I did stand up for a while. I haven't really done that because I kind of realized I don't love it. And being a road comic, I'd end up dead in some hotel room somewhere. Well, like the way I live, it would not work well for me for a long time.
Well, good that you realize that.
Yeah, no, find your strengths and weaknesses. And, the podcast is obviously something that it's made me more money than it's cost, I'll say. It's something that when people say, if you had $1 billion, what would you do? Oh, I'd still do that, of course.
Right.
I'll never stop doing that. The acting thing is something that to find my first acting job, I had to spend hours just kind of stalking people on the internet and figuring out what movies are shooting locally in the Tampa
Yeah.
Bay area. Finding production companies that actually film locally. Then finding their website, finding the people who produce the movies, direct the movies, and figuring out how to get in touch with them. And that's really, not being in Los Angeles or New York, that's really the way to get work in Florida is you have to hunt it down.
You got to find what's coming to you.
Right. Yeah. It's not going to come knocking at your door. You've got to go get it. And really, I'm sure it's that way in LA and New York too, but there's a lot more opportunity.
No doubt.
A lot more competition too.
Sure.
But no, I've been lucky enough it's been less than 2 years of even trying to act. I got my face and my name on 2 movie posters. I have a premiere in a few days for my second movie I was in called Haunted Happy Hour. So, the other thing I've decided after filming a couple movies is I want to now use that capital I have to make my own movies.
Right.
I have some liquid assets, and cash is king in this world. So might as well try to spend money to make money. So that's kind of my philosophy at this point.
So what platform is Haunted Happy Hour coming out on?
I'm not sure yet. The premiere is just for cast and crew, and I know that the director Jack Bremen, I know he said he's entering it in film festivals.
Nice.
I know the goal is to try to have it premiere sometime around October because it's kind of a Halloween Hallmark ghost movie.
Well, tell me a little bit about it, because when you say Halloween and then you hear happy hour, it obviously equates to what you're drinking right now. So
yes.
for those of you watching at home. So talk to me about what the movie's about.
Yeah, so it's about the main character is Jay, and he's played by Jack Bremen, the guy who also wrote, directed, and produced the film. He owns a bar in St. Pete, and he's struggling to pay the rent. I'm the head brewmaster, I guess, so I'm the second lead to his character. He comes to me and decides a scheme is to pretend that the bar is haunted and get it on ghost tours. And through the course of events, it actually becomes haunted. The ghost being played by Eric Roberts.
Okay.
Yeah, and never met him.
I can see him playing a ghost. Okay.
Yeah, he shot his stuff in L.A. We shot everything else in St. Petersburg.
Yeah.
But the bar becomes haunted, and then there's some romance angles, but the bar being haunted is kind of the main struggle that has to be overcome. We'll say.
So clearly based on a true story.
Yes, yeah. Well, and I was so lucky that this film, was like meant for me, in my opinion, because it was filming less than 5 minutes from where I lived at a actual functioning brewery in St. Petersburg. And the guy who owned the bar, there was a non-alcoholic beer keg hooked up to the taps, but there was also real beer hooked up to a couple of the kegs. So, I got to drink beer, act. Yeah, I really could not. There couldn't be a better 14-hour day.
You found your dream job.
Yeah, it really was. Unfortunately, it was only 9 days of shooting, but gosh, that would be. Need to make like a modern day Cheers where I could just be a bartender and constantly be drinking and.
Well, I was going to say to you, how come you never kind of did that for like some part time work? Because obviously you enjoy that environment and things like that. So how come bartending wasn't a way you ever went to go?
I don't have my kids. I'm divorced, so I don't have my kids ever on Mondays or Tuesdays. And I've long thought if I could get a bartending job on a Monday, Tuesday, it would be fun to be out, talk to the people. But everyone I talk to about bartending kind of frowns upon the amount I drink. Like that's that's apparently you can't be pounding whiskey behind the bar and the bar doesn't make as much money when you know.
When you're drinking all the inventory.
Yeah. No, I can pack a punch when it comes to down on alcohol. So.
Well, if that's not a resume item right there, I don't know what is.
It's it's top line of my resume actually is you need someone to drink, I'm your guy.
There you go. So now moving on to YouTube for a second. I checked out your YouTube stuff before, and so you do food reviews, but you do food reviews with a twist. So why don't we talk about those?
Yeah, well, that's one of those things that I said earlier, where you just try everything and see what sticks. One of the things was, I have a tendency when I don't have my children to get hammered and then be starving. And, I'm responsible. I don't want to start a fire by trying to cook. Sure. So I order food. And the thought crossed my mind, that first of all, to be a healthier person, I should stop doing that. But the other thought was, realistically, I know myself, I'm not going to stop doing that. So why don't I film it and see what happens? So that was the creation of Drunk Jeff Eats, which is really the main thing on my YouTube channel, I would say. Right. And I don't know of any other drunk food reviewer out there. Yeah. So I'm hoping that gains some traction and takes off. If it doesn't, oh well, I'm already doing it, so I might as well film it.
You might as well just get some videos of it. Now, what's amazing to me, and this is the first thing I thought of again when I watched it, I'm like, I give you credit because you obviously have the semblance of mind to order food, set up your video, and do it. Meaning it's one thing, people say they're going to do something, and then when they drink, what they were planning on doing, they just totally forget about it and they don't do it. Mm-hmm. Or they do it in a really poor capacity because they don't have the mental, wherewithal to do it. Your videos are great. I mean, if you told me you weren't drunk, I probably would have believed you too, because, I guess that's a credit to all the time and effort you put into your drinking over the years.
Yeah. Well, it's just like habitual. I'll be quite honest. Last night, I don't remember, but I opened my fridge this morning and I saw that I had leftover Popeyes in there. And I thought, oh, I bet I filmed a Drunk Jeff Eats. And sure enough, I did. So Sober Jeff goes through, edits out. It was a messy one.
Well, it really takes both of you to do it. Drunk Jeff records it, and then Sober Jeff, cleans up the mess the next morning and edits the video.
Yeah, it's a two-man job. It really is. Yeah. I've again, this is something that like a therapist's wet dream right here. But like, I've often compared myself to Bruce Banner and the Hulk. Like, there's two different people. You don't know what the other one's doing, but yeah, they stay alive. They don't end up in jail. Seems to be working.
So you don't plan. So you don't have a plan beforehand. Like, hey, I'm going to drink tonight, and tonight I'm going to order from X. You just, as part of your good mood, you say, hey, I'm hungry. I'm going to order from wherever.
Well, that's not totally true. I say no, but sometimes it is planned. Sober Jeff will actually go on Uber Eats and put food in the cart. And then later, Drunk Jeff goes on Uber Eats and there's food in the cart. All he has to do is order. So there is some preparation as far as that goes. And I won't lie, there are a few Drunk Jeff Eats that I recorded 100% completely sober.
Sure. Okay.
So the true fans can tell the difference between the two.
Now, when you're Sober Jeff doing it, I assume you're trying to pretend you're Drunk Jeff?
A little bit, yeah. And a lot of times it is just... I can't remember the actress who said this on a podcast, and it's kind of stuck with me. Is the way to act like you're drunk is focus so hard on sobriety, meaning just focus on proving that you're sober to people. Mm-hmm. And that actually comes off as a good drunk. If you're any words you mispronounce, you repeat it and clarify that you said it correctly.
You're enunciating very carefully. Yeah.
You're a little slower because you're making sure not to slip up on your words. I like to think I pull off a decent drunk when I'm sober, but there's no.
This goes back to your acting classes in college as well.
Right, right. Well, that's something I've said too. Is I've done a couple things where I've been a background actor, um, and the hardest that to me is way harder than being an actor, being a background actor, because there is nothing more unnatural than constantly in your head saying, "Just act natural. Don't look at
Right.
the camera. What would a bartender do in this scenario without making any noise?"
There's an episode of Modern Family. I don't know if you ever watched Modern Family.
Mm-hmm.
And that's exactly what's happening. It's Phil and Gloria are somehow background people in a restaurant.
Mm.
And they're the table right behind the people that are acting, and they're supposed to act natural. And they can't act natural, and they keep having to cut because they're laughing and they're going, the arms are moving, and the more they're trying to be natural, like you just said, the crazier they're getting. And they made a whole episode out of this.
It's the worst. It is. I did a scene in a movie, Valentine's Town. It's called, and it was just background, no noise. But I'm with a date, and
Mm-hmm.
she and I are supposed to be talking while the main character's date walks in behind me, and I'm just like smiling, like laughing, nodding my head, and someone's like, "You look like a psychopath. You're not talking." You're just laughing and nodding your head.
You're laughing at nothing.
I don't know what and then the next take I had my hands blocking my face because I was talking like this.
Right.
No, I'm like, all right. I just need to be the focus of the camera at this point.
That's clearly the lesson here. You are not designed to be a backup person.
No, and again, I give background actors all the credit in the world. It is way harder, at least in my book, to naturally be in the background than it is to be the focus of the camera.
Well, that's the thing also with acting in general, like you just made a good point, and it's for everyone, the camera blocking the way it is, being a background person, well, you got to keep your head at a certain position. You can't put your hand here. You can't look this way because obviously the number one cardinal sin is you can't look directly at the camera.
Right.
So there's all these things as you're trying to act natural. These are all these things you have to remember that I have to do that aren't natural. I can't turn my head this way. I can't move my hand this way. And as I'm thinking about it, as I'm talking to you now, I'm very, I move my hands a lot when I talk. So for me to have to sit like this the entire time would be very unnatural for me.
Yeah, no, it is. That I think is the underrated part of acting overall is how unnatural. No matter what you're doing, it's so unnatural to do it because first of all, you're doing whatever you're doing like 15 times, right?
Yes.
Like even if you nail the scene perfectly, you still do another take for safety. Sure. You nail the scene perfectly, they still have to rearrange cameras and lighting and do it again from another angle.
Right.
So you're doing everything more than a couple times, honestly. So there's never the the shock value of what someone says. Your reaction, is always going to be rehearsed. And also a lot of times it's, you got to move, but keep your feet exactly where they are. Your body moves, but your feet can't because otherwise you're messing up the frame, the framing of the shot. In Haunted Happy Hour, I was used quite often as the edge of the shot, so I had to stand very still to make sure I was the edge of the camera.
So back to the film for a second, because obviously Eric Roberts, he's not an A-lister by any stretch, but he's a name in the industry that obviously I think most people would know. He's been in a lot of stuff. So for a small production in St. Petersburg, even though he did it out of California, how were they able to secure someone like that for that movie?
That's a good question. I know that was the goal. I know that when we were filming, the ghost was who's going to play the ghost. Nobody knew. And I know the rumor on set, and it really wasn't a rumor. It was a pretty small cast and crew. So we knew it was true, but he said, we're getting name talent to do it. So I assume there's some money involved, obviously.
Yeah, of course. Well, yeah.
I made the comment that they should get Danny McBride to play the ghost. And then they said, but then they just think you were the ghost the whole time because apparently I'm his doppelganger. So we didn't know it was Eric Roberts until he, sent it sent us that months after we had filmed the rest of the movie.
Right.
But he's, my excitement was when the movie poster came out. I'm in the top left corner of the movie poster, and in the middle, right kind of beneath me, is Eric Roberts, and I'm like, well, that's cool. That
I'm gonna have to Google that poster as soon as we're.
Oh yeah. You can. I think it's up on IMDb now too.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
We'll have to get a little screenshot here for the podcast. We'll have to get a little screenshot of the poster right here as we're going through this. But that's awesome. So I wish you the best of luck with that. So what are your plans now going forward? We're gonna keep working, keep Drunk Jeff, trained. So you're gonna keep working out that skill.
Yeah, Drunk Jeff Eats isn't going anywhere. I also started, which has confused some people. I've started to review Cuban sandwiches on my YouTube channel.
That seems natural progression.
Yeah, and I don't. Those are not drunk necessarily. They could be, but they're not necessary that they're drunk. That's more just because I live in St. Petersburg, and Tampa Bay is where the Cuban sandwich was actually invented. Not Miami, Tampa. So I thought it's a nice way to kind of connect with local people, and we'll see if that becomes something. So those two things aren't going anywhere. And the Jeff Macolino podcast isn't going anywhere.
Yeah.
I've had a couple auditions. We'll see if anything comes out of that recent, in the near future. And then really my next stage, what I'm doing, actually, when I'm at the premiere in a few days for Haunted Happy Hour, I'll be talking to some people and asking questions because I really want to get my own film going. I've got the capital, of course. I'm not comparing myself to Sylvester Stallone, but there's a documentary about Stallone where he talked about being typecast as a certain kind of actor. And, he wrote Rocky, and he turned down millions of dollars to let someone else play Rocky, a name talent. He said, no, this is mine, and he made his career off of that. So I'm not comparing myself to Stallone, but there's also not roles written for a 6'2", 260-pound dude. It's, I'm, to be honest, I understand it. The movie I'm in, Women Want Everything, that's on Amazon Prime right now. In some scenes, I look like a freak of nature. And 6'2" is not freakishly tall. No, right. But compared to other actors, I've got a big head.
Yeah,
that also makes me look kind of weird. I'm very large on camera. So,
especially depends on who you're standing next to.
Right. I know what ultimately needs to happen is I need to be in the MCU, hopefully as a villain, because then I'll be around men my size, and I think it'll look better. But in the meantime,
it's a good goal.
Yeah. In the meantime, I want to write some things where I can kind of show off my acting, hopefully make some money in the process. But, just write, act. I'll hire someone else to direct it. I'll hire someone else to do all the camera stuff and edit it. But that's kind of where my head's at right now. Is the next big thing you see from me will probably be a movie, maybe a TV show, but more likely a movie that I'm funding myself.
Well, if you're looking for a 50-year-old balding Jewish guy for a part, I'm probably available. So just because I know those are those are hard to find.
Yeah, every movie needs one. So I mean,
if you want the movie to be successful, clearly you need that role.
Yeah.
Now I was going to suggest to you, but then for liability purposes, it's probably not a great idea for you. They have certain ideas where people expand. So right now it's Drunk Jeff Eats, but imagine if Drunk Jeff did other things. But then I'm thinking a lot of those other things might really hurt. Drunk Jeff. We don't want to do Drunk Jeff mows the lawn. Drunk Jeff might cut off his foot. Mowing the lawn. So. So there's probably ways to take this elsewhere, but we have to just make sure those are safe things.
There definitely is. I did do a couple of Drunk Jeff. I think I called it Drunk Chef Jeff, where I cooked drunk food. One time, I was actually proud of myself. One time I did find random things in the pantry, like canned food, ramen noodles, make a meal out of it, and it turned out pretty well. I did that a couple.
Important. Drunk Jeff has a sober friend with them when they're using the stove.
That's kind of the problem. Is I feel like I'm literally playing with fire.
You're literally playing with fire. Yeah.
I do have another Drunk Jeff games potentially coming down the pike. A friend of mine and I have been talking about that, and potentially also there are some games that you could maybe play sober and then play drunk and compete against yourself. So that might be, there's some interesting avenues. I also want to do a Can Drunk Jeff Do It? I don't know if you've ever heard of I don't even remember what it's called, but you chug a beer, you run a quarter mile, you chug a beer, it's a beer mile or something like that. You run a mile while you're chugging beers. And most people throw up while they do it. I'd like to try that. I obviously need someone to handle the camera while I physically, probably give myself a heart attack. But
yeah. Drunk Jeff goes to the ER. There you go. So
you can
roll right to that.
I mean, the possibilities are endless. The goal is not to have a video called "Drunk Jeff Dies."
Right. Yeah. Drunk Jeff's funeral. Yeah, we don't want that.
Actually, I mean, now that we're saying it, if I do die, we better put Drunk Jeff's funeral on YouTube.
I mean, clearly, I think your tombstone has to say, Drunk Jeff. I mean,
Yeah, can Drunk Jeff do it? No.
I don't even think Macolino goes on your tombstone. I think it just says Drunk Jeff.
Yeah, I'd be okay with that. I've said before, this is again a morbid thought, but I've said before, it'd be a real shame to die sober for me. I luckily moved into a 1-story house, but I used to live in a 2-story house, and I always thought if I fall down the stairs and end up dying, everyone's going to assume I'm drunk. So God, I better be. It would be horrible to be sober.
You don't want to disappoint your fans.
Yeah, well, everyone's going to assume it anyways. It might as well be true.
Yeah. And the interesting thing about you and I talking right now is I am probably the anti-drunk Jeff. I grew up in a house with no alcohol for no reason. My parents never drank. I never drank. I went to a party school and really never drank. As you're finishing one can and opening another as we're talking. Yeah. So here I am with my my iced tea, which is just delicious. But yeah. So, when I go places with friends, they make sure I have my, Arizona iced teas and they drink whatever they drink and we're all good.
Yeah, well, I do love, I love sober people, who are down with people who drink, if that makes sense.
Well, listen, my friends in college loved it because they knew someone was going to be sober enough to get them home safely.
Yeah, designated driver is a key position.
So I do have a role in people, in drunk people's lives. So you see, it all works out well.
Yeah, and I will say this. Where there's been occasions where I'm the only sober person or the only person not drinking, and I still enjoy myself. So,
there's a lot of fun in observing and making fun of people who are drunk.
Yeah. There are good drunks and there's bad drunks. Right?
Yes. I mean, yes.
And to me, bad drunks, why do you drink? Why would you do that to the world?
If you're becoming belligerent or nasty, agreed. If you're going to have a good time and you can control it.
I'm stunned by people who get hangovers. I've never had a hangover in my life, but I feel like if I woke up with a hangover, I'd never drink again.
Right.
Part of my philosophy, again, sounds bad, especially probably to a sober person, but I can do things that other people can't do. Like humans can't drink the amount of alcohol I drink, sleep for 4 hours and wake up and be perfectly fine, sober, happy, no headaches, no problems. I don't know why, I don't know how, but I mean, it's a gift. Why I can't waste it. Right?
Yeah, I think we're going to leave it at that right there. It's a gift. Why waste it? That's right. So the motto for today's podcast is, hey, if you have a gift, why waste it? Yeah, that's all I can say. As you're drinking out of your Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles can holder. Wonderful.
Turtles don't do drugs.
they just drink, apparently. Yes. That's funny. So I'll tell you, this is kind of funny. I was not a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle fan when I was a kid for no reason, just wasn't. And when I get to college, my first college roommate, you get in the room, and he was from a small town in Pennsylvania, very much like a hick town. So we were just two totally, completely different people. So when I get in the room, he has 2 posters hanging up. One was Hulk Hogan, and one was the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. So for my 2 months that first semester, I had to look at the Ninja Turtles every morning when I woke up. And yep, that was the first thing I saw.
Yeah, I loved Turtles as a kid, so it was a pretty much a straight trajectory for me. Like there was no choice but to love the Ninja Turtles.
Yeah, you had to be a fan.
Yeah.
So why don't you just tell everyone listening, where they could find your podcast and your channel on YouTube and all that good stuff.
Yeah, the Jeff Macolino podcast. I mean, it's on Spotify, Apple, pretty much anywhere you find podcasts. You can find the Jeff Macolino podcast. The YouTube channel where I put some podcast clips up. I did. There's going to be more. I did do a Drunk Jeff, Sober Jeff skit. I did a couple of those. I'll do more of that. People like that. But Drunk Jeff Eats is the main thing on the YouTube channel. It's just Jeff Macolino. And yeah, I guess I'm on all of the socials, even though I don't do a good job at them. I'm on them: Instagram, Facebook, X, I think. Yeah. TikTok.
Yeah, it's X now. That's right.
Yeah. I think this is the first time I actually got it right and didn't call it Twitter.
It'll always be Twitter to me. Yeah.
I still, this is, I'm kind of embarrassed that I actually said X. It should have said
when
Twitter.
I go on my phone, I look for it. I still look for the little bird. And when I see the X, I just scroll right over it because I'm still not used to it.
Yeah. I don't know what that is.
I think sometimes people just change things to same things. Twitter was working fine. Why do we have to call it X?
Yeah. Elon just likes to go to the beat of his own drum.
No doubt.
Good for him, I guess.
Yeah, right. He's doing something right. So
apparently.
Listen, it was a pleasure having you. I do appreciate the time. More so than on this one than others, that the opinions expressed by our guests are not necessarily those of our firm and should be taken as entertainment and entertainment solely. We are in no way condoning you making your career based upon starting with the word drunk. So we will leave it at that. Jeff, it has been an absolute pleasure talking to you. It was a lot of fun, and I wish you nothing but continued success.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to Adeptus On-Air. If you like this episode, please subscribe and leave a review. The views and opinions by the podcast speakers and guests are solely their own and do not reflect the opinions of Adeptus. This podcast provides general information only and is not intended to constitute advice.